Hey everyone, welcome to a new episode of the VSP podcast. I'm Anthony. Today I'm going to be diving into something that may not resonate with all the listeners, but it's going to resonate with some of the people that I work with, and that's the USA Amputee Soccer Team. So I was lucky enough to be named the strength and conditioning coach for their team. I've been working with them for about a year now, and the way that they sprint is very unique, right? Most of the field players, right, they are utilizing arm crutches, right? They're on one leg. So the mechanics of the way they move around is vastly different than somebody like myself or most of you. So I've been trying to dive into, what are some of the characteristics of these sprints? So without further ado, let's get into it. All right, so let's jump in, right? So I try to break it down, right? You have the foot to ground interaction, which we look at with anyone. We also have the way that the hip extends, right, which is again traditional for acceleration. We have also the way the crutch interacts with the ground, and then lastly is the upper body motion, right, the way that the arms swing with their crutches. And each one of those, I try to break down and identify, right, and I've been trying to look at really good sprinters with arm crutches, and then people maybe that aren't so good. I'm trying to figure out, all right, what am I looking for? What do we need to train in order to make them more efficient and overall, obviously, faster? So we're going to start off with the foot, right? So the way the foot interacts with the ground is pretty similar to somebody running on two legs. While the foot is in there, it starts to supinate. It slowly, as it hits the ground, pronates and rolls through, and you go to the toe up position, finish with the big toe. So that seems, pretty similar. When you're looking at the way that the foot continues to interact with the ground, step over step, that's where it's a little bit different, right? Where the foot isn't necessarily striking in front of the center mass, as you get to more like that top end speed, it consistently is striking underneath or behind, which again is a little bit different than somebody running on two legs. So the acceleration angle, because they typically don't strike too far behind the center of mass, right, is not going to be the same. It's going to be a lot more upright. So because of the foot positioning, it affects the upper body range of motion as well. So that's also important to know. It's not going to be the same. Another noticeable difference is that when an athlete with arm crutches is sprinting, their foot typically contacts the ground twice before their crutches hit. So, just in comparison to the stress of the crutches versus the foot is obviously taking on a lot more load. Right? So those are just some of the things I'm looking at, right? But there's still so much to learn, and I'm going to continue to share that with everybody. So, as we move from the foot, then we go to the way that the crutches interact with the ground. And I think obviously this is the greatest mechanical difference between traditional sprinting and those using arm crutches. The crutches play a huge role. I myself, maybe bad luck or whatnot, I've been trying to mess around with crutches, so I can start to feel it and understand, what they demand sprinting with crutches. It is very different. It is super humbling, and it makes it even more impressive than they already are. To sprint and change direction and move with their arm crutches. And I always think the greatest coaches, they know what it feels like. They've done all the drills. So I want to make sure that when I'm giving my players these exercises and drills, I know exactly what it feels like, so I can give them that necessary feedback. One of the things that I've noticed, right? So the crutches typically strike, right in line with the body. Sometimes they're staggered, right? Different athletes. The faster ones typically are a little bit more at the same time. But this changes. This may be different based on the limb length, right? Some players have a little bit of a higher, some of them are a little bit lower. So that may determine how they're striking the ground. And also what side they have the amputation on, right? That's also going to matter when in terms how they're going to strike the ground with their crutches. So again, these are things that I'm going to be learning a lot about. But where I've seen some issues, like striking them too far out in front, which is going to put a lot of strain on the shoulders. Planting the crutch too close to the body, right? So it will limit that horizontal projection. And then striking too aggressively, right? It's not a forceful, right, placement of the crutches, right? It needs to be timed, the sequencing, just like anything else in sport, right? Whether you're pitching, throwing the ball, changing direction, you're sprinting, whatever the case may be, a lot of it's sequencing in the time. Next thing we're going to go to is hip extension, right? This is going to be one of the most important qualities when it comes to how they accelerate. And obviously this needs to be done in conjunction with the rest of the body, but the fastest athletes consistently demonstrate complete hip extension, allowing the knee to travel behind the pelvis before initiating recovery. The slower athletes often struggle to achieve this position, limiting both the stride length and the force production. Right, so that was something I saw consistently, is that knee does get behind the hip, during that projection, during that extension. The pelvis does externally rotate, right, as they extend, which is just like anybody else who's running. And the coaches should be able to observe the outside of the hip, rotating out, just so that they're getting that full hip extension. Although propulsion is shared between the foot and the crutches, powerful hip extension continues to be one of the defining characteristics of faster athletes. So, that should be something that is consistent across the board. And then lastly is going to be the arm swing, right? So in traditional sprinting, right, or somebody running on two legs, the arms work opposite the body. For sprinting with arm crutches, right, the arms are moving, right, essentially together, right, and they need to, be asymmetric. They can't be asymmetrical in their movement, or else that typically throws off the way that they're going to project their body, right? Sometimes, I see a lot of athletes, they start projecting to the left or to the right based on where they're placing the crutches on the ground. And this is something that I'm going to continuously, explore. I'm going to experiment with, and I'm going to be asking a lot of questions, especially when it comes to how, players utilize their upper body when it comes to sprinting, because it definitely, you see them fatigue out pretty quickly, right? And even when I was trying to demo it myself, I was noticing a lot of fatigue through my shoulders and my lats after a long, many drills. So I'm going to continue to do my research, do my due diligence, ask questions, and try to figure out as much information as possible, so I can relay this, to everybody else, because there's not a lot of information on this. My goal is to, is help others, right? There's people all around the world that love to play, different sports, on arm crutches, and I want to help you out. I want to give you drills, I want to give you information, so you can better train yourself. So if you have any questions, right, or if you are somebody who knows a lot about this, please reach out, right? You can shoot me a direct message onto my Instagram, shoot us an email, pop into my facility. If you are somebody on Long Island that trains on arm crutches, I'd be more than happy to have you in, shoot some videos, we can chat a little bit, and try to learn together. So thanks for listening, guys.